Our story begins in the 1830s with a man whose name would become legendary in American farming, Cyrus Hall McCormick. McCormick didn't just invent the mechanical reaper, he revolutionized how America fed itself. His genius wasn't merely technical, it was strategic. While others focused on perfecting their machines, McCormick understood something profound about the rapidly expanding nation around him. McCormick leveraged the growing railroad network to distribute his harvesters across the continent, turning his McCormick Harvesting Machine Company into a household name among American farmers. But McCormick's success would soon attract fierce competition, setting the stage for what historians now call the Harvester Wars. The late 19th century agricultural equipment industry was absolutely ruthless. Companies engaged in cutthroat competition, patent battles, and price wars that sometimes threatened to bankrupt the entire sector. McCormick faced his greatest rival in the Deering Harvester Company, and their battle for dominance became so intense it nearly destroyed both companies. But from this chaos emerged opportunity. On August 12, 1902, something extraordinary happened that would reshape American industry forever. McCormick, Deering, and three other major firms, Milwaukee Harvesting Machine Company, Plano Manufacturing Company, and Warder Bushnell and Glessner did the unthinkable. With financial backing from Wall Street's most powerful figure, J.P. Morgan, these bitter rivals merged into a single, colossal entity, the International Harvester Company. In one stroke, IH controlled nearly 85% of the U.S. market for harvesters and reapers, instantly becoming a global titan in farm machinery. Curiosity loop. But here's what's fascinating. How did a company born from such bitter rivalry manage to not only survive, but absolutely dominate for the next 8 decades? The answer lies in something most people don't realize about International Harvester's early strategy. H's secret weapon wasn't just market control, it was relentless diversification and innovation. Armed with immense resources from the merger, the company quickly expanded beyond harvesters and reapers. They developed plows, seed drills, combines, and later moved into trucks and construction equipment. By 1909, just 7 years after the merger, IH had become America's 4th largest industrial enterprise. The 1920s marked International Harvester's golden era, and it all centered around one revolutionary machine, the Farmall tractor. The Farmall wasn't just another tractor, it was a game changer that set new industry standards. Its reliability and adaptability made tractors practical for a broader range of farming tasks than ever before, transforming American agriculture. This was the first successful row crop tractor, allowing farmers to cultivate crops planted in rows with unprecedented efficiency. By the 1940s and 1950s, International Harvester had cemented its place as an American industrial icon. The company's products touched every corner of rural and industrial life. IH tractors and trucks were everywhere, and the Farmall brand achieved legendary status among farmers. The company employed tens of thousands and maintained a vast global presence spanning continents. International Harvester's innovations during this period were remarkable. They introduced advanced diesel engines that revolutionized farm power, developed new combines that dramatically improved harvest efficiency, and made significant advances in mechanized agriculture that transformed farming practices. The company even ventured boldly into the consumer market with vehicles like the iconic International Harvester Scout, one of America's first SUVs that would inspire generations of off-road vehicles. But success, as we'll see, can breed dangerous complacency. By the 1960s and 1970s, subtle but ominous shifts began threatening IH's seemingly unshakable dominance. New competition emerged from more agile and innovative rivals, notably John Deere and Caterpillar. These competitors weren't just matching IH's products, they were systematically surpassing them in market share, technological advancement, and customer satisfaction. The company that had once been nimble and customer-focused had become increasingly bureaucratic and slow to adapt to changing market conditions. Management often dismissed crucial feedback from customers and dealers about declining product quality, overproduction issues, and emerging market needs. IH's expansion into less profitable ventures, such as civilian vehicles and massive overinvestment in new plant infrastructure, began seriously straining the company's financial resources. Curiosity loop. But what really brought down this industrial giant wasn't just competition or bureaucracy. There was something far more devastating brewing, a perfect storm that would cost the company almost $600 million in a single year. But what could possibly hit a company that hard? In 1979, the United Auto Workers launched a strike against International Harvester that lasted nearly half a year. This wasn't just any labor dispute. It was a catastrophic blow that exposed deep cultural and operational divides between management and labor that had been festering for years. The strike cost IH almost $600 million, money the already financially strained company simply couldn't afford to lose. This devastating work stoppage revealed fundamental problems in how the company managed its workforce and operations. The 1970s brought a perfect storm of challenges that would ultimately destroy International Harvester. The U.S. economy faced crippling high inflation and soaring interest rates that made borrowing expensive and business planning nearly impossible. Agricultural downturns reduced demand for expensive farm equipment precisely when IH needed robust sales most to service its mounting debts. The devastating UAW strike was just one symptom of much deeper structural problems. Management, led by CEO Archie McArdle, made a series of catastrophic miscalculations that would prove fatal to the company's survival. They wrongly predicted a surge in pent-up demand after the strike that never materialized, leaving them with excess inventory and unfulfilled production capacity. They continued making risky investments and expanding operations while the company was drowning in an ocean of debt. External economic factors made everything dramatically worse. High inflation eroded purchasing power, rising interest rates made equipment financing prohibitively expensive for farmers, and policy decisions like the Carter grain embargo devastated IH's core customer markets. These factors left the company with warehouses full of unsold equipment and increasingly desperate cash flow needs. Meanwhile, IH's management had become completely out of touch with both market realities and their own workforce. They ignored customer feedback about quality issues, dismissed employee warnings about surplus production problems, and failed to recognize how rapidly competitors were gaining ground. The company's bureaucratic structure prevented quick responses to market changes, while rivals moved swiftly to capture dissatisfied IH customers. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, International Harvester was in serious financial trouble. Archie McArdle's aggressive cost-cutting measures did little to prevent the looming disaster. The company's situation became increasingly dire with each passing quarter, as losses mounted and debt payments consumed available cash. In 1982, a new management team led by Louis Menck attempted to rescue IH through major restructuring and strategic asset sales. But the damage was already too extensive and the debt burden too overwhelming. The company had waited too long to address fundamental problems, and market confidence had evaporated completely. Twist. But here's the twist that most people don't know about International Harvester's collapse. The company didn't actually die. International Harvester transformed itself into something completely different through a dramatic corporate metamorphosis. In 1984, the company made a decision that would have been unthinkable just decades earlier. They sold their entire agricultural division, the very heart of their original business, to Tenneco, which merged these valuable assets with J.I. Case to form what we know today as Case YH. The remaining assets were gradually restructured, and the company was completely rebranded as Navistar International. Today, this successor company produces medium and heavy-duty trucks and school buses, still proudly carrying the International name. So while the agricultural giant died a dramatic death, its industrial spirit lives on in a completely different form. The collapse of International Harvester wasn't due to a single catastrophic mistake, but rather a complex web of interconnected strategic and operational failures that compounded over time. Complacent management became dangerously disconnected from both market realities and their own workforce, systematically ignoring customer feedback and employee warnings about quality issues, surplus production problems, and competitive threats. The company had become heavily leveraged with unsustainable debt loads and couldn't weather the severe economic shocks of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Poor strategic decisions led to massive investments in new plants and product lines that failed to generate adequate returns. Diversification attempts often missed their targets spectacularly, particularly in the highly competitive civilian vehicle market, where IH lacked the expertise and brand recognition to succeed. Meanwhile, more focused competitors like John Deere and Caterpillar pushed aggressively ahead with more innovative, reliable, and better supported products, steadily eroding IH's once dominant market leadership. The company that had once defined innovation in agricultural machinery found itself desperately playing catch-up in an industry it had essentially created and dominated for decades. Even after its dramatic breakup, International Harvester's legacy remains enormous and continues to influence modern agriculture and industry. Case IH, built from IH's agricultural division, continues as a dominant global force in farming equipment, serving farmers worldwide with advanced machinery that traces its technological lineage directly back to McCormick's original innovations. The international brand lives on powerfully through Navistar International, a leading manufacturer in the commercial truck and bus sector that maintains the company's tradition of building robust, reliable vehicles. The legendary Farmall tractor and the iconic International Scout maintain devoted followings among collectors and enthusiasts worldwide, highlighting the lasting emotional connection and affection for IH's most successful and beloved products. These machines represent a golden era when American manufacturing led the world in innovation, quality, and dependability. The company's dramatic arc from innovative startup to market-dominating giant to spectacular collapse mirrors the experiences of many American manufacturers in the late 20th century, including other industrial icons that seemed invincible until they weren't. The rise of International Harvester coincided perfectly with America's emergence as the world's dominant industrial superpower. The company's tractors and equipment helped feed not just America, but much of the world during critical periods of the 20th century, including both world wars and the post-war economic boom. IH's innovations in manufacturing techniques, distribution networks, and marketing strategies influenced entire industries far beyond agriculture. But the fall of International Harvester also foreshadowed challenges that would face American manufacturing for decades to come. Increased global competition from more efficient foreign producers, changing labor relations in an era of declining union power, the growing difficulty of managing large corporate bureaucracies in rapidly evolving markets, and the constant, relentless need for innovation in increasingly competitive global markets. What can modern business leaders learn from International Harvester's dramatic story? First, that market dominance, no matter how complete or long-lasting, is never permanent in a competitive economy. IH controlled 85% of their core market at their peak, yet competitors eventually overtook them through superior products, better customer service, and more responsive management. Second, that internal corporate culture matters just as much as external market position. The breakdown in communication between IH's senior management and both their workers and customers proved ultimately fatal to the company's survival. Companies that lose touch with their key stakeholders like employees, customers, dealers, and communities do so at their own grave peril. Third, that financial prudence and conservative debt management remain crucial regardless of market position or historical success. H's dangerously heavy debt load left them vulnerable to economic downturns and unable to invest in necessary improvements precisely when competitors were advancing rapidly and gaining market share. Finally, that innovation must be continuous and systematic, not episodic or reactive. The company that created and defined the modern agricultural equipment industry eventually fell behind because they stopped pushing the boundaries of what was technologically and commercially possible, allowing hungrier competitors to seize the innovation initiative. Beyond the corporate statistics and financial figures lies a deeply human story that's often overlooked in business analyses. The collapse of International Harvester profoundly affected thousands of families across America and rural communities worldwide. Workers who had spent their entire careers with the company, often following in their father's footsteps, suddenly found themselves unemployed in economically depressed regions with few alternative opportunities. Communities built around IH manufacturing facilities faced economic devastation when plants closed permanently, leaving behind empty buildings and shattered local economies. Farmers who had relied on International Harvester equipment for generations had to rebuild relationships with new suppliers and learn different systems, often at significant cost and disruption to their operations. Yet this human story also includes remarkable resilience, adaptation, and renewal. Many former IH employees found new opportunities in the companies that acquired different parts of the business, bringing their valuable experience and expertise to new organizations. The deep agricultural knowledge and sophisticated manufacturing expertise didn't disappear. It dispersed throughout the industry, continuing to contribute to American agricultural productivity and innovation. The story of International Harvester is ultimately the story of American ambition, innovation, and the eternal cycle of creative destruction that defines modern capitalism. From the bitter harvester wars of the 1890s through the golden age of the farmall tractor to the devastating strikes and financial collapse of the 1980s, IH's journey encapsulates both the soaring promise and the harsh perils of American industrial enterprise. This company that once seemed utterly invincible, controlling vast markets, employing tens of thousands, and literally helping to feed the world, ultimately fell victim to the same powerful forces that had initially driven its meteoric success: relentless competition, technological innovation, and the unforgiving demands of the global marketplace. Today, as we face new technological revolutions in artificial intelligence, renewable energy, biotechnology, and digital transformation, the timeless lessons from International Harvester remain remarkably relevant and instructive. Market leaders must stay intimately connected to their customers' evolving needs, maintain rigorous financial discipline, foster positive and productive relationships with their workforce, and never stop innovating or challenging their own assumptions about market dynamics. The rise and fall of International Harvester reminds us that in business, as in life, nothing is permanent except change itself. The companies that thrive over the long term are those that embrace this fundamental reality rather than fight against it or deny its implications. So here's my question for you. Looking at today's corporate giants, companies like Amazon, Apple, Tesla, or Google, do you see any parallels to International Harvester's story? What lessons from IH's dramatic rise and fall might apply to modern businesses facing their own competitive challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive into business history fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more similar videos.